Welcome back to another witching half hour or so. It's your favorite witch, Jody Ann, and I'm here with you today. We are going to be talking about tarot cards today. It's a tarot episode. I can hear Luna walking in the background. I don't know if you can hear Luna Bell. She heard me start talking and now she's going to come over and hang out while we record. Well, she's restless, so we'll just leave it and we'll just keep recording. Where were we? Today is a tarot episode. We have been making our way through the high arcana of the tarot. We started way back at the Fool card, and now we are at the 10th card of the tarot. We are looking at the Wheel of Fortune today. Before we get into it, I do have a little bit of housekeeping. I want to invite you to hit the subscribe button here and join our earbud coven. I do an episode every new moon and every full moon. I want to thank every one of you who has subscribed to the podcast and joined our earbud coven. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. It really helps people find our coven and join our community. I want to remind you that I do have a newsletter. It's called A Little Bit of Magic. It goes out every month. I put a bunch of wisdom and witchcraft, a little bit of spell casting, and it's just a way to offer some encouragement to you. It's not a sales email. It really is about support and community and letting you feel less alone on your path. So please go over to the website and sign up for the newsletter. This year, I started 2023 doing a series on the elements, and the only way to get the meditations and exercises for those elements is through the newsletter. Okay, so please go on over, subscribe. I'm not going to jump into your inbox with tons of sales email. It's one email once a month full of magic and encouragement for you. Okay, so let's get into our tarot card today. We have been making our way through the high arcana. We started way back in season 1 with the Fool card, and we have made our way to the 10th card of the tarot. That card is the Wheel of Fortune. Those of you who've been on this journey from the beginning with me and who've gone through all the tarot episodes, you know that there will be a YouTube link as well that drops on the same moon as this episode. I find it's really hard to talk about such a visual divination tool without having a visual companion to it. So that's what the YouTube is. I go through my deck collection and I show you guys some cards and we talk about the symbology. It's not the same as what I say on the podcast. It's its own entity over there on YouTube. So go on over, have a look at that. You will be able to find that if you Google the witching half hour or so in the YouTube videos come up. There'll also be a link in the show notes. It's embedded right in there. So when you read these show notes, you can just pop over to YouTube. So I think of the tarot as 3 sets of 7. This is how I was taught way back when I was in my 20s and teens and I learned this craft. We are now in the 2nd set of 7. That means we're looking at a different level of energy, a different expression of energy than the first 7 cards. So there's a lot more esoteric type meanings and a lot more spiritual meanings in this set of 7 cards. I was taught that the 3 sets of 7 correspond to your 3 initiations as a Wiccan. That's the first pantheon, the first modality. How would I say that? Wicca is the first pagan path I found. I became a witch in the 90s. So that's what was there. I now identify as a eclectic witch. That would be much more fitting to the path I practice now. So the Wheel of Fortune card ties into the idea of our life path and our destiny. There's a couple ways we can look at this. There's a couple ways it shows up in readings when you're reading for clients or for yourself. One of the most direct ways the Wheel of Fortune comes up is when someone is asking about career or job or a change, something to do with their outward life, like their business life, their outside their home life. And the Wheel of Fortune card will come up. When it shows up that way, it tends to be talking about how the person is on their path, how it validates that the decision someone is making is in line with them and in line with their purpose in life. That's the positive that's kind of the positive, direct meaning of this card. It'll show up to validate that you are on your life path, that you are moving through your life path, and that your destiny is on target. Because it's a wheel, right? It ties in with the whole idea, the cyclic idea that so much of pagan spirituality and witchcraft and esoteric spirituality ties into. The idea of the wheel of the year, the cycles of life, birth, death, rebirth, death, that whole cycle, the turning of the wheel. On most cards that you see, they will either show the triple goddess, a maiden, mother, and crone, or the Norns. I'll show you on the YouTube, I'm going to show you my favorite card that this depicts from the Mythic Tarot. It's beautiful. It has the 3 Norns and the wheel is a spinning wheel. So we'll talk about that on the YouTube. The other way it'll show the idea of patterns and the turning of the wheel is by having 4 seasons or the 4 quarters, right? Sometimes you'll even have the different elements represented the way they are in the tarot. So within the wheel that is illustrated, you'll have like a cup and a sword and a wand and a pentacle somewhere on the wheel, really tying in the idea of life, death, birth, rebirth, how the elements create life, how everything is cyclical, and how everything is connected. Like I said at the beginning, we're in that 7th set, so we're looking at real esoteric ideas with these cards that we're going to be diving into. But what does all that mean when you're actually reading a card? How do you take these kind of heady ideas and transform them into information that's going to help you when you're doing a tarot spread? The first way we already talked about, it'll validate where you're going. A lot of times, though, the Wheel of Fortune comes up and it talks about timing. And it'll talk about how we are kind of at the mercy of destiny. That we don't always have control over the way things unfold or the timing of things unfolding. When this card comes up in an area of your spread where it's more of a warning or has a more negative connotation or a more sinister energy around it, I don't know how else to say that, loves, you will find that it's talking about how we as humans often try to push against our destiny and push against our fate, and the wheel can crush you. Right? Whenever I think of this tarot card, there's like a really old lyrics from an old, really depressing song a friend of mine was obsessed with when we were teenagers. And the lyrics are, "Love kills the butterfly on a wheel." And all I could think about is like and just how helpless such a beautiful thing was. But like a wheel can really run away with you and crush you. Part of being a really great card slinger and giving really specific, good readings to people is being able to look at the spread and know what aspect of a card is being highlighted, especially with the high arcana cards, the ones that are talking about really heady theoretical, philosophical ideas. You need to rely on the cards around them to give yourself information and to give your reading substance. So the negative aspect, or the lesson aspect, the more difficult aspect of this beautiful card that is often a positive omen in a spread, is that we are at the mercy of our fates and the wheel. That all things turn, all things have their season, and those seasons will happen whether or not we love the idea of them. Pushing against the divine timing of life can cause great sorrow. Waiting for the timing of life can also cause deep frustration. So there's an element in this card about learning to trust the divine, learning to trust the natural cycles of life, learning to trust that where you see your path projecting, that it will come to you. Knowing when in your energy you are at the top of a wheel, ready to start coasting down through a cycle, or whether you are at the rising of the wheel when it's time to struggle and put forward energy and boost upward, right? Everything is cyclical. One of the things I thought was interesting when I was pulling cards for this episode out of my collection of decks is there seems to be two ways the symbology shows up. The first way it shows up is we'll have a wheel divided into 4 quadrants. Then either the seasons are depicted, or the elements are depicted, or the 4 suits of the tarot are depicted, or any combination of that. And it really shows the symbology of the wheel of the year, not just the wheel of fortune or destiny, but the wheel of the year in our Wiccan and Celtic and British traditional and really most neo-pagan traditions, right? We have the 4 main sabbats and then the minor sabbats, so the major ones being Yule, the spring equinox or Ostra, the summer solstice, and Samhain. And then the minor ones in between those, you've got Imbolc, Beltane, the autumn equinox, or Mabon as it's also called, and Lammas, which is the first harvest. So you have that wheel cut up into the 4 quadrants, symbolizing the cycles, the wheel that we go through. Or you have the depiction of a wheel, and then you have the symbology of the maid, mother, and crone, or the Norns. So you'll have this idea of the fates, weaving your fate with your life thread, and not so much the turning of the calendar year or the cycles of life, but the personalization of it with the fates weaving your life and the cycles of your personal life. And I think this is interesting to think about because as the wheel turns through the year, right, as the wheel goes through and turns through the season on the clockwork of the cycles of our planet and the moon and the sun and the seasons, our personal life also has its own seasons, right? We have our own childhood, which is spring. We have our own harvesting and working period, which is motherhood. And then we have our own resting period, which is our crondom. And the cycles of our life through each stage, like our personal, I know this is kind of off topic and kind of heady, but the whole idea of like sometimes we feel like we're in that energetic push where we have a lot of energy and a lot going on, and we're really creative and we're really doing a lot. We're kind of embodying that spring energy, even though it might be physically December or physically January in the world. So I think the Wheel of Fortune is a really interesting card when we're doing readings for ourselves, because it can talk to us about our own personal cycles. What are our cycles? Where are we in them? Are we feeling in control of our life, or are we feeling as if the fates are controlling everything? How can we embody empowerment and be within our life cycle and present and aware so that we can operate better within the world? I know that's kind of deep and heady. I'm not sure if it's on topic of this card. It's definitely a teaching I've gotten while studying the tarot, and it might not really relate to how you read for your clients, but I hope it does help you as you dive into yourself. The divination tool of the tarot goes, if you ask me anyway, it goes beyond just reading. Like, it's a really good tool for self-reflection and for learning on your own spiritual path. And I think that's why the Golden Dawn made every single person illustrate their own tarot deck. Because when you start diving into the symbology and the meanings, there's a lot of esoteric teachings inside this divination tool. And the layering of the symbology can be quite deep. And when we understand those layerings, that's how we become better tarot readers. Yeah. I think that's about all I have to say about this card. I know it's a pretty short episode. Some of our tarot episodes are kind of miniature ones, but that's okay. If you want more, you can always dive over to the YouTube where I'll be looking at some of the symbologies there. And more stuff seems to come into my little mind when I am doing those. So it is different information. I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me in your earbuds in our little coven. Thank you so much for all of your comments, for all of your feedback, for all of your support. Thank you to each and every one of you. And I will see you soon on another witching half hour or so. And I think today was definitely an or so. Okay, take care, my loves. Bye-bye. I got lost in my own digression. Okay, just pause a sec. Mic test. Oh, that scared me. Oh my God. Now, a lot of my